Guys, I can't say enough how lucky you are this afternoon. In a couple weeks, we'll be celebrating Memorial Day here in our great country. And sometimes it gets lost, and as Ms. Neumann will mention in a few minutes, it gets lost with car sales and, whether it be Amazon or whatever else, we're dealing with different things on Memorial Day. But what we really should be doing is taking pause to celebrate the sacrifice that our veterans have given us. And we have an amazing opportunity today to, we don't have to necessarily go to Washington, D.C. to celebrate our veterans. They live among us here in Southborough. And I'm going to be introducing Ms. Neumann in a moment, who did a documentary on the gentlemen standing behind me that have served our country in their armed forces. A little Army versus Navy heavy, but that's a topic for another time. Okay? I know you're going to be an outstanding audience. That's without question. And many of you that went to D.C. over Veterans Day this past November got a little tasting of the type of remembrance we need to do for our veterans. Okay? This is another point in the year where we take that pause. Okay? So I know we're a little early, we're a week and a half early, but the timing of this is perfect, because in a couple of days, you guys are going to be hearing about the Fallen Heroes Foundation, which is an unbelievable national organization that helps veterans and their families. So that's something we're going to hear a little bit about on Friday. Right? But what we're going to do today is I'm going to introduce Ms. Neumann, who's going to tell you about her project and is going to introduce the gentleman behind me. We're going to show you the documentary that was made about Southborough veterans, and then you're going to have an opportunity to ask these gentlemen questions. Okay? So be thinking of that as the documentary progresses, and listen to their takes on different questions that were asked them. I'm sure I know many questions will pop up. But at this time, I want to introduce Terry Neumann, who is going to be a future tenant of Trottier Middle School. She is one of the people that works with Southborough Access Media, who is going to be building a TV studio right at the end of the hallway down here in the old Tech End room. So I want to introduce and please give a warm welcome to Terry Neumann.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming today. I want to start out by introducing my new friends here, and they're your neighbors, but they're everywhere. This is Mr. Arthur Butler on the end. This is Mr. Steve Wynott, Navy, and the rest are Army. Mr. Chris Robbins, Mr. John Wilson, Mr. Mel Kisner. And anybody know who this is?
Annalise, you better know.
Mr. Dan Kalenda. I started working for Southborough Access Media a couple of years ago, and I live in Northborough, didn't know anything about Southborough, and met up with Mr. Wilson, and after doing some interesting film shoots, discovered that there was some really special people in the community, and they all had some great stories to tell. And so, lots of stories. And so what I did is to get it all down on film, to preserve it, because I feel it's really important to be aware of how we got here, so that we know where we are going, and then to also appreciate everyone who's in our community. So if you will take anything away from today, I would like you to understand that they're heroes, there are heroes because of the community, but they are just people. And when you see them, just look to them and say hi. And Veterans Day and Memorial Day is not just one day, it's not about a sale, it's not about a day off. It's also all year long, so you can say thank you all year long. So I would like to introduce these guys in the video, and let's
Can I do the helmets?
Oh,
yes!
Oh, geez!
Just, Steve, could you
No. I was the only Navy guy, so these are all Army, so just so you know.
Not touching that. Not touching
Yes, well, in the front row, in the military, you're always supposed to have your head covered with a hat. So, I want some volunteers. Chris, don't go too far. Whoever you give it to will take off with it.
Want to wear a helmet?
You want me to just
Another volunteer.
I have a pack? John, you want me to pass it?
Go ahead.
Yeah, pass it on.
Right on.
Oh, yeah. The idea is, well, come on up here. These things are heavy. We'll pass them around. But imagine, let me put this up. What's your name?
Johnny?
Johnny, that's my name, Johnny. So, and leave it on. It's pretty heavy, isn't it? Okay, you sit down. And then give it to, so leave them on, pass them around. No, leave it on for a couple of seconds.
See how heavy it is.
And, which more careful, the helmets are more.
The helmets are more. All right, guys, are we ready to be a good audience? Yes. All right, let's have our feet down on the floor, please. All right, gentlemen, if you don't mind having a seat, we'll get things started. All right, guys. What we're going to do now is we're going to give you guys the opportunity to ask our local veterans some questions about whether stuff you heard here or just questions you might have. Okay, we'll call you one by one, make sure that everyone gets the opportunity, okay? Is there anyone that has a question off the top? Yeah, if you gentlemen are okay to stand, that'd be great. We have some microphones if that would help. First question, do we have a question? Josh, go ahead.
What was the reason why you wanted to join the Army or the Navy?
Who wants to take that? How about the Navy guy?
What was that? Why did you want to join the Navy?
Versus the Army.
Yeah.
You want the honest truth?
Sure.
When I was a senior in high school, I had two close friends that didn't show up for class one day. So the next day they show up. I said, "Where are you guys?" "Oh, we went down and joined the Navy." "You did?" I had no clue what I was doing coming out of high school. The last couple months, I had no clue. But I kind of followed the Navy. I like ships and stuff. So I went down to the Navy recruiter down in Framingham, and I said, "I want to join the Navy. I want to go with my two buddies." "Sure, here you go." He hands me the paper, signed right there, "You go with them." Guess what? They went in 2 weeks before I did, beginning of October, and I went in the end of October. But I wound up seeing them up in I went to boot camp up in Great Lakes, Michigan. So I wound up seeing them up there. But I enjoyed it. I did 4 years active Navy, went to the Coast Guard for 13 years. I did another 7 years in the Naval Reserve. And I only got out because I was forced out. They were pushing people out at the time. I'd still be serving if they would take me, but probably not be as heavy as that. But I enjoyed it. It was a great experience. Just like the guys in the Army would tell you, it's a great experience, and the friendships that you build, they're still lasting.
Great. Chris.
Did your family support your decision to join the Army?
Who you want that to?
Anyone?
Go ahead, John.
So I will say, so, can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Better without a microphone. All right. So I will say I was very fortunate. So my family supported me. My wife Kathy, Annalise. I think Annalise was maybe in 2nd grade when I went to Iraq. So one of the neatest memories that I have is so I was in Iraq. Has anyone ever heard of Skype? So you guys have Skype, okay? So we didn't have FaceTime and all this other stuff, right? But we had this neat thing called Skype. So when I was in Iraq, Annalise's 2nd grade class, we worked out with their teacher that we were going to Skype from Iraq, and so I was going to be the mystery reader. So anyone remember mystery readers in 2nd grade? All right. So it was kind of cool. So the 2nd graders had written letters to me. I had written letters back. I mean, it was great support. I had received care packages from Southborough, and it was wonderful. So I decided, you know what? I'll be the mystery reader. So when, if you guys know, so when Skype, you're looking into your computer. I'm in Iraq, and all of a sudden I see this school at Finn, and the students sitting on the floor, and I'm going to be the mystery reader. Annalise didn't know it was me. All right, so it was pretty neat. So when she saw, her dad on the screen, who she hadn't seen in a long time, she got a little teared up, ran off the screen, to be with Mom. And so I didn't get to see her the whole time I read my story, you know. But that's the kind of love and support that I got and still receive, because I'm still in. I'm in the reserves now, but you know, it really demonstrates, you know, when we're over there, we leave our families, we leave our jobs, we leave our communities. But when you see the communities there supporting you, while we're really far away, it makes home seem less far away.
I want to add one thing about the Navy versus the Army. The Navy always slept on sheets because they were on board ships. Very clean, they could sit down, have warm meals, etc. Whereas the Army, we're out in the field living in foxholes in mud. So there used to be a saying that would go around, the Navy gets the gravy, but the Army gets the beans.
After you got out of the military, are there any like choices or ranks that you would, thinking back, that you would have tried to achieve? And this goes out to anyone.
So like that one.
Yeah, which one did you ask for? What kind of ranks did you hope to achieve that maybe you hadn't? Did you want to be general officer?
Well, I think in my case, when I served in the Army, I had gotten drafted originally, and then I was fortunate enough to go to Officers Candidate School, which you probably don't understand, but I got a commission as an officer. And when I got off active duty, I was a captain. And the one thing that I guess I regret, I stayed in the National Guard after that, and eventually got out as a lieutenant colonel. But when I was on active duty, and I had made up my mind I was going to get out, I was made an offer to take a 2-year assignment in Australia, which even now I think back, I'm very happy the way my life turned out. But I think back that a 2-year assignment as a captain in the Army, working with the Australian Army, would have been a great chance to see another part of the world and see another culture and so forth. So for any of you that are thinking about joining the service after you get out of high school or college, there are some great opportunities, and you can always keep it in the back of your mind. And then just quickly, while I have the microphone, we had handed out those helmets, and I only see one person wearing the helmet. You scoffed out, I guess. Johnny's got the other one. Where's the third one? All right, okay. Just want to make sure. Next question.
Next
Did that
question.
answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll follow along with that. When I came out of the Navy, I was a second class in E5. I went to the Coast Guard, and my own stupidity, I didn't push myself to make rate. I was comfortable. I worked for captains. I worked for senior staff at the district. I was a great Coast Guardsman. I was there first thing in the morning, last one at night. Always had great evals, but personally, I never pushed myself. And that came back to haunt me, because when I got into the Navy, back in the Navy Reserve, I was still in E5. And then I started to realize, and maybe it took a while for me to grow up, but some will say I still haven't grown up, but to realize that I want to get advanced. So I started taking the test. I started doing extra things. I started doing extra drills, doing extra work, volunteering on the ship to do certain things, and making myself visible and showing them that I cared. I like being there and I wanted to do something. So that's how I was meritoriously promoted. The captain on the ship could promote one enlisted guy per year. And one year I was the guy that they promoted. So I was able to stay in a few extra years. In the Navy, for enlisted, if you make the rank of chief, that is like the ultimate. I missed that because I didn't push myself, I didn't drive myself. And I would tell the younger kids that were on the ship with me, don't just do just don't come aboard, do your thing that night and get off Sunday afternoon and go home. Do other things, do extra courses, do work, strive for a little bit more. Let them know that you're interested. Let them know you want to do certain things. I was on a fire team. On board ship, you don't have your fire department is the men on board ship. I volunteered to be part of the fire team. And next thing you know, all the guys in my division were being volunteered to be in the fire team. So I was pushing myself. So I regret not having stepped it up sooner. And I could have retired at a higher rate, a few extra bucks each month, you know, the whole 9 yards.
I wanted to make a comment. What you don't see up here is a woman who's been in the service, and you'll be proud to know that there are hundreds, thousands of young women who join the military, and they've added an enormous, initially when we went in, most of the women who went into the medical corps, were nurses, but now they hold very important leadership positions. And today we have a young woman who is now a second year at Annapolis, whose parents work at St. Mark's School. And a couple of years ago, she was the first woman, except for Irene Tybert. Irene Tybert was a Marine and recently just passed away. But she was the only woman that I recall marching in the parade. John would know more because he's lived here all his life. But this young woman who went to Annapolis, she was dressed in her whites. And it's the first young woman that I'm aware of in Southborough who was a part of it. But I want the girls to know that there is a career in the military, and for the boys here to know that it's not about just fighting a war. It's about protecting the peace, helping other nations recover from a disaster. But a lot of, I've got a couple of friends who joined. I'd say, you guys correct me, about 50% at least of all the positions in the military are in a support mode. They need extraordinary competent technicians, linguists. How many of you speak a second language here in the room? Look at this. That's your biggest competitive advantage in the business world today and in the military, because we have such a diverse workforce. And I wanted to say the biggest two lessons I learned about the military. A, there's a common bondage and camaraderie because we have a mission, because if things do go into a combat role, we are totally dependent on each other. This is the most important thing I learned, is that you always have to be sure, growing up as you are, and as you get an adult, is to always be with people who will cover your back and be supportive and who are highly competent. You don't want to go in the military and there are officers and enlisted people who don't have the right stuff. We're not all perfect here, but they're very smart officers, and the training is extraordinary. And you learn to work with people that you never thought you could work before with. That's one of the great things you come away with, and the mission drives that. But as youngsters, always look around you and say, am I standing beside the right people who will cover my back when things are down? And all the way through your career, you have to make sure you find the right people to work with so you can be successful in your life. And the biggest return on this, John Wilson and I were out for lunch today, and you heard us tell a couple of funny stories. One of the great things about the military is it's a fraternity, sorority, or life. You leave, and whenever you meet somebody who served, you always have that story to share and tell that will create a friendship for a lifetime. So think about it. It's an alternative. It's not about combat. It's about serving your nation for the greater good of a nation that's extraordinary, and you're lucky to be a part of it.
One more, just a second. Just a little pitch for the military, and that is, you probably all know that college education costs a lot of money these days. Well, one way to get a free college education is through many of the programs that the military offers. You have to serve the military, but they pay you back in a big way later on. So it's something when you get into high school you might want to think about. You had a question?
Do you guys ever look back and say, I'm a world hero?
I'm a what?
A war hero.
No.
Well, I'll give you my pitch about I'll talk about heroism for just a second. And I always think of it, and I've talked about this before, that there are basically 3 ways to show your bravery and so forth. One is that maybe all of you are brave, or you think of yourselves as being brave. And if you're ever given the opportunity, or you're put in a circumstance, you might show that you're brave by being courageous, helping somebody out, working hard to maybe even save someone's life or whatever. But to be a war hero is way above and beyond just the ordinary person. For example, I've used this terminology a couple of times. You watch David Ortiz on TV on the Red Sox hitting doubles or home runs, and you say he's a hero. Well, David Ortiz is a sports star. He's not a hero, okay? Just if you want, you can kind of remember that. There are real heroes, and unfortunately, a lot of them either got injured or got killed, and they're the ones that rose above it all. And you may or may not have something like that happen to you in your lives. But I don't know of anybody up here. I mean, I went to war, but I don't consider myself a hero. I went and I made it back.
The heroes, you know, downtown Southborough, in front of the library, there's the All Wars Memorial. There are 11 names, 12 names on the front of that memorial. The last name that was etched up there was the only kid from Southborough that was killed in Vietnam, Bob Foley. He was 11 days from going home when he was killed in a boat in Vietnam. Those are the real heroes. And also, if you've ever been into the rural cemetery, and I'll throw that offer out to you young men and women, a week from Friday, the 27th, we're going to be going through and replacing all the flags at rural cemeteries. We take the old ones up, we put brand new ones. There's like 850 or so veterans that are buried up at rural cemetery. Does anybody know what the Medal of Honor is? Anybody heard of the Medal of Honor? The Medal of Honor is the highest award that can be given for bravery in combat. Did you know that we have a Medal of Honor recipient in Southborough? How many know? Not many. There's one for the Civil War. So I welcome you to come join us Friday night, the 27th at 6 o'clock. The Boy Scouts, some of the police and the fire department, our state representative, Carolyn Dyckman, is usually there, the veterans, and then Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts. And we put the flags out for those that are up at the cemetery. But the real heroes, those are the ones that are on that memorial. And the ones on the memorial in DC, the Vietnam Memorial. And the memorials around the country. Those are the real heroes. We just did a job, did what we were asked to do.
Any more questions? Yes, John.
What were the worst conditions that you've been in?
Ooh, Arthur.
The worst conditions you've been in.
The worst condition.
That's right. We'll get a mic.
Maybe I can talk about enough. Well, I'm the granddaddy of this group. I'm World War II. So, and I went to get into service. I spent 3 months in Texas, basic training. Then I had a year in California, and it was like the country club. In the barracks, after I'd been there a while, I was lucky, I don't know if you call it lucky, but I had a corner cot overlooking Monterey Bay, so that was country to the best. Yeah, and here's an office job. Okinawa came along, and needed more men, and so I went to Okinawa. And I was in a line company. I was in an infantry regiment, and I didn't get in until the campaign was about a month over. And the first half of the first months, they really had it tough. But by the time I get into the action, the Japanese were retreating. So one time I remember there was fighting going on, and we moved up individually, and we had to cross the street and brush and bushes on either side. But the Japanese had that road lined up. They had to cross it. Well, the time I got to go across, I was all alone. I was slow or something. I was kind of worried. There was a tank over here fighting away. The troops liked the tanks, but they didn't like them too close because a tank would draw fire from the enemy. But anyway, I finally caught up with the rest of the bunch. That was one of the scariest points I had. Most of it wasn't bad at all. Thank you.
Any other questions? No more questions, huh? Is there anything else you guys would like to say to the students?
Another question?
Question?
One second. No, go ahead, go ahead.
That's how we all appreciate the fact.
There's, anybody ever read in the history books President John F. Kennedy? And you know the history behind President Kennedy? PT 109, Sarajevo Straits, getting split in half and all that survival?
Some, not all. Some of them.
Some?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the president served in World War II. He was on a PT boat in the Sarajevo Straits, which is off of Japan, and his boat was run over or cut in half by a Japanese destroyer. Pitch black, they didn't see him, they cut him in half. He lost some of his crew, and then they survived on an island. Well, the president winds up, at the time he was a naval officer, but he winds up becoming the president. And one of his famous quotes, I hope I do this right, is the proudest thing I can say is that I served in the United States Navy. The pride that he had, and just like these guys here, Mr. Butler, you saw another gentleman up there from town, Earl Watkins, another World War II veteran. The pride that they have in what they did, they served their country. Yes, there was a draft back in World War II. Yes, there was a draft around Vietnam. Some people decided to go to Canada. Some people decided not to serve. But the ones that served, it's an everlasting, as Mr. Robbins mentioned, an everlasting bond between servicemen. Now, I joke around when I'm up here with a bunch of Army guys, and I was Navy, and yes, we had clean sheets, coffee 24/7, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, good food.
But it's a rivalry of respect. To this day, in fact, just within the last 2 weeks, last week, I got contact with a guy that I served on board ship 45 years ago. He's up in Arizona. We still have a bond, we still have a contact. I know these gentlemen are the same way. So it's a lot of pride and respect for not only ourselves, but our country. And I get a little emotional every once in a while, especially when I see that red, white, and blue.
So you guys probably, I'm confident everyone here appreciates, all that they have, the school that you have. Know that in many places, I served in Iraq. I had 3 missions to the Democratic Republic of Congo, if folks know where that is, in Africa. 1 mission recently to Uganda. where there's no, the gentleman asked about, some difficult conditions. I would say Arthur had the most difficult, right, in World War II. But there are, some of these other countries, there's no running water, no electricity. You cannot eat that food that they eat. There's constant strife going on and conflict. The peace and security we have in America, the beautiful schools that we have here, the outstanding teachers that we have here, and your administrators, we all are able to enjoy learning in an environment like this of freedom because of the men and women who serve in the armed forces. So, something to think about. What we have here just doesn't happen. It happens because of, in large measure, the what folks before you have done in helping secure the country that we live in.
There's another saying, freedom is not free, and it's not, because somebody's paying the price. You watch all these ads on TV, free, free, free. Guess what? Nothing is ever free. Even that cell phone that your parents give you, that's not free. Somebody's paying for it somewhere. Someone up in the middle.
Matt.
Does PTSD affect soldiers more now or back then? Like World War II?
PTSD. So if folks don't know what PTSD is, post-traumatic stress disorder, and so it's oftentimes people see something that happens in combat, they may come back without any visual wounds, but they clearly can have wounds, mentally. And so I will suggest that PTSD happened often, but it wasn't diagnosed like it is now. So now it wasn't that long ago if you came back from war and you're in war and your nerves are getting the best of you, or you take yourself out of the fight, or you see things that are so bad that you just personally shut down. You are looked upon as maybe a weaker individual. So I will say now, when I came back from Iraq, everyone gets asked multiple questions about, hey, how are things over there? How are you doing? A lot more about your feelings than ever were asked maybe in probably in Arthur's time in World War II, or times in Vietnam and Korea. That was probably never asked, but it was a big issue then, and it wasn't addressed. It's a big issue now, and at least it's starting to be addressed.
And that is actually one of the things you're going to hear about Friday when the Fallen Heroes Foundation comes. They're going to talk about supporting veterans that suffer from PTSD, and we'll get into that, I'm sure, a little bit on Friday. Yes, a couple more questions. Go ahead.
Were you guys drafted, and if so, how was that like?
How many of you were drafted?
Does everybody know what that means?
Does everyone know what that means? That's a good point.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
Go ahead,
there is no draft now, although drafted means that you did not voluntarily go and sign up for the military. It means, in my case and in Chris Robbins' case, that President Lyndon Johnson sent us a letter saying, greetings, you are now in the United States Army. And they gave us a date to report. So you went and took a physical and you were drafted. And every male, at the time, every healthy male was had to sign up for the selective service, and you were eligible to get drafted. Or you could go and sign up. And Mr. Butler got drafted into the Second World War, right? You got drafted?
Drafted. You were drafted, correct?
Yes, I was going to college then, and the war hadn't started when the draft started, because I think the draft started before December 1941. But anyway, I was going to school, and the draft deferred me until the end of the war, at the end of the school year. I think I was only graduated, it was over a month before I got called. But at that time, you didn't think much of it, because everybody else was in the same situation. It was a thing to do. And
I'd like to,
there's a good chance that the country may have a draft again, who knows?
I'd like to make some last comments. The thing that pleases me the most, and you guys should all be proud of this, is the way our returning soldiers and sailors and Marines and Air Force people are now highly respected and proudly wear their uniforms on the street without being spit upon, which happened when veterans, soldiers came back from Vietnam. They were maligned terribly. People would actually spit on them on the streets. And if you wore your uniform on the street, you got off an airplane and you're in uniform, and you went out on the street, people would beat up on you. That's how bad the climate of the country was during Vietnam and after Vietnam. And I'm so proud to say that all those feelings have gone away, and we're so proud of our military today. And you guys are the ones that are making us all proud. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. One thing that I was very proud of this year is when we went to D.C., and if you recall, when we went to the Vietnam War Memorial, there were veterans there, and we thanked them for their service. And we did that a couple of times throughout the weekend. And I remember, and I'm sure many of the chaperones remember this, it was a couple of years ago, we were at the Vietnam War Memorial, and there were veterans there preparing a ceremony, and our students went through and shook their hands, and one of the veterans said out loud with emotion on his face that this was the thank you that they never got. And our kids stepped up and did that at the time. And I'll tell that story for such a long time. I was incredibly proud of our students. Guys, we do have to get going now, but I'd like you to please thank them.